Hello, beautiful humans. Thanks for joining me. And yes, I'm calling you all beautiful. I'm certain you're all beautiful because nobody ugly would watch my live stream ever. Thanks for being here. You're all beautiful humans right now. Even the trolls who came to just trash me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking time out of your day. That's what I love to say to the trolls. Thanks for taking time out of your day to hang out with me. That's the thing. Even if you're here just to insult me, you took time out of your day to spend it with me. So I still win. But yes, let's get into some of what the mainstream media is not telling you. Of course, I will do the jumping off point is things they tell you, such as the fact that Zelensky has just come to Washington, D.C. Our good friend Voldemort, or whatever his name is, Zelensky, is headed to Washington. Actually, I'll show you a BBC headline here. Good old BBC giving you the propaganda at all hours. You know, that's what's great about the BBC. Some propaganda they stop at certain hours. You know, you can only get it 7 to 11, right? If you want your local convenience store propaganda. But BBC 24/7. They work so hard over at BBC to fill you guys with propaganda. But yes, Zelensky is headed to Washington, Ukraine's leader in the U.S. for his first foreign trip. And Congress is already slobbering all over him. And I'll let you use your imagination on which parts of him they're slobbering on. That is up to you. I am not getting involved in that. Listen, it's on you where you think they're slobbering on. But Zelensky, the president of this proxy war. I mean, here's the thing: Zelensky is he's a puppet, all right. I say here's the thing too much. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about here's the thing. Sometimes I'm halfway through it. Here's the thing. I go here's the, and then I insert a here's the thing into there. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Zelensky was a puppet even when he wasn't a puppet. Well, all right, he's always been. Let me rephrase. Zelensky was a puppet for other reasons, even before this proxy war began. He was outed as hiding his money in the Pandora Papers. Is that the one? He's hiding the offshore accounts. But on top of that, how did he get into office? He got into office because a billionaire in Ukraine, which you notice that America before this proxy war popped off talked about Ukraine. There'd always be a parenthetical after they'd say the word Ukraine. They'd say Ukraine, one of the most corrupt nations in Europe or Russia. You know, it was always one of the most corrupt nations. It was always, no matter what they were talking about, it was one of the most corrupt nations. And they would always say that. And now that the proxy war has begun and Ukraine is our buddy, our pal, we're just fucking high-fiving them, slobbering on various parts of their anatomy that I'm not getting into. Now that we're doing that, you never see that parenthetical, right? They're never like, as Ukraine fights, as Russia invaded Ukraine, one of the most corrupt nations in all of Europe/Russia, Europe/former Soviet Union. They never mention that now, but Ukraine, and I think there's some truth to it. Immense corruption over there. Hell, Hunter Biden was on a board of an energy company getting $50,000 a month, so for doing nothing. That shows you the level of corruption. But and then Biden admitted in front of a large audience and on video, which you can go watch, that he went over there and told them that if they didn't fire the prosecutor looking into the company that his son sat on the board of, then he would withhold billions of dollars of aid. Sounds pretty corrupt to me. So it was and is a rather corrupt country. But Zelensky was, from the beginning, was funded, he was an actor, right? He was a comedic actor. It's sad to have to go after your fellow comedic actors like this. This really hurts me to have to do this. But he was a comedian actor. You guys know this part. And he basically got elected because they aired a series of him as the star who took over government and wouldn't put up with everybody's shit and, basically was a man of the people and just got rid of all the corruption. And so this comedy, and he's wearing dresses and things throughout it, and he's a silly comedian because that's what's in Ukraine. And they air this thing a bunch on Ukrainian television. Now I don't know how many channels there are on Ukrainian television, but the guy who both produced it and owned the channels where it aired a lot and made it a hit is also Zelensky's top funder, a billionaire. So this guy owns the channels, airs the thing, makes Zelensky a household name. Then Zelensky runs. I'm sure this guy also funds all of the PR people that say, hey, this comedian actor said, hey, fucking is going to take over government and do all the right stuff. He's awesome. And so they fund all of that. They fund the PR people, and they get him into office. So he was a puppet of this billionaire, Ukrainian billionaire, even before the proxy war. But now he's a puppet of the entire West, the US, UK empire. And so anyway, he now comes to the United States in his first trip over here, and our Congress is fawning over him. I'll read a little of this BBC article. Ukraine's President Zelensky is on his way to Washington, where he will meet U.S. President Joe Biden. It is his first foreign trip since Russia invaded in February. The U.S. has confirmed it will supply Ukraine with a Patriot missile system, significantly increasing the country's air defense capability. You know what BBC is leaving out? Significantly increasing our chance of fucking nuclear Armageddon, you goddamn assholes. All right? That's what it also is significantly increasing, because Russia's a nuclear power. Russia is at war with Ukraine. If the U.S. gives Ukraine, the more missiles the U.S. gives Ukraine to fucking shoot down Russian jets, the closer you get to nuclear Armageddon. And there is no winnable nuclear war. It's just a fuck fest. All right. Sorry to use such choice language. I'll rephrase. It's just a clusterfuck. There, that's more polite. And as I've often said, if some of you out there think, don't worry about it, I can survive nuclear war. I know where there's a bunker. There's a guy next door to me. He built a bunker in his yard, goes down like 300 feet. It's amazing. I'm gonna live there for 4.5 years. I'll be fine. Even if you have a game plan where you think you're surviving this nuclear Armageddon, when you walk out of the bunker, you're not going to want to have survived this nuclear Armageddon. There's no scenario where you come out of the bunker and it's fucking roses and chocolates. All right. It's people eating each other's neighbors, selling each other's small dogs for food. It's not pretty. It's not something you want to be around. So Zelensky coming to D.C., the U.S. giving him a Patriot missile system, a nice little Christmas gift. We're like, please come see us. We'll give you a Patriot missile system. Zelensky tweeted, on my way to the U.S. to strengthen resilience and defense capabilities of Ukraine. And everything's always defense, right? Never offense, even though we know that Ukrainian Nazis killed 15,000 people in the Donbass region since 9 years ago, beginning 9 years ago, 2014. So, or 8 or 9 years ago. So, is that defense? Where those Nazis were defending themselves by killing Russian children in Donbass? Wow, it's some fucking hell of a defense. And in case you think what I'm saying right now is just pro-Russian, no, it's pro-anti-war. All right. I realize I've got a pro followed by an anti, but this is how a pro-anti-war, real anti-war person speaks. They tell you the entirety of the situation that should result in a fucking peace deal right now and end this goddamn shit, rather than just telling you one side of a little propaganda and saying, oh, well, we're defending, we're creating endless war in defense. We're doing that to defense things. And by the side note, complete tangent. If one more person tells me I look like fucking Zelensky, It's been like 7, okay? 7 people have said that, and you shut the fuck up. You shut your face. I do not look like Zelensky. Yeah, we have similar facial hair. All right. I'm sorry. But, whatever. Don't tell me I look like that goddamn clown. He's a literal clown. He's like the actor who runs around in a dress going, "Oh, golly gee," like that's his kind of comedy. So he's more of a literal clown. I'm just a soft clown, like a soft coup. I'm a soft clown. And by the way, the other thing people like to say is, oh well, Zelensky. It can't be a Nazi government in Ukraine because Zelensky is Jewish. Yeah, and we had a black president that bombed the living shit out of black and brown people. All right, we had a black president who did more to further the destruction of lives in non-white countries than just about any president. You can have people that represent the race, the religion, the look, the gender of a certain certain group and still be horrific. We had Condoleezza Rice, a black woman at the head of one of the most horrific war criminal administrations, the Bush administration. We had Hillary Clinton, a woman, right? Destroying women around the world. Doesn't give a shit. The gender doesn't matter. The skin color doesn't matter unless those people represent the oppressed peoples. Like, yeah, you can find a Jew to stand up for Nazism. It's sad and pathetic. It doesn't mean that it's not happening. By the way, I actually, another story that just happened is the Azov Battalion, the neo-Nazi Azov Battalion, which New York Times has called them that. Most other mainstream medias have called them that in the past. Now they don't say it so much, but in the past said it a lot. They just went to Israel and met with the Israeli government. That's right. Neo-Nazi battalion from Ukraine. I assume, as is standard for Nazis, want to wipe out the Jewish people because they are scum and shit and horrible dumpster fire human beings. Like the moral core inside of them is just a dumpster fire, just burning, smoldering for their entire life. Those humans are in Israel meeting with their government because the Jews, and again, you can have Jewish people persecuting others. You can have Jewish people aligning with Nazis, and it's disgusting. But the Jewish people in Israel who are in the government there have become the fascists, have become the oppressors. They've become the monster that we Jews said we would never allow to exist again. Palestine is without a doubt the largest open air prison in the world. It's a dictionary definition of an apartheid state. And I feel like I'm getting a little off the topic here. So, Zelensky in Washington, going to give a speech to Congress. And that's important because so few people that are not of the U.S. government give speeches in front of Congress. It's like the Pope, Netanyahu, but there's not that many that are actually called physically in front of Congress, and they give they're invited to give a speech in front of Congress. And it means that Congress is so unanimously disgusting and in support of this proxy war that they're all fine with having this person speak to them in front of Congress. In general, I would say that the fact that two people are meeting in the flesh doesn't matter much anymore. We love to make a big thing out of that, right? They go, the ruling class, they got together. There's a meeting where in Davos, they meet in human form and they shake hands. They put their one hand goes into another. And my opinion on most of these things is, could they not have done the planning without ever meeting? Like, do they not understand how Zoom works? Do they not understand how the streaming services work? Like, no, all the shit you should be worried about by our ruling class, not all of it, most of it, 98%, is done not in person. It's done in a Zoom call behind closed doors. All right. Like the fact that the human beings got together in a room, it used to matter. It used to be a big deal, right? You go back 100 years, because letters, you couldn't establish deals with letters because it took 6 months to get there, and by the time it arrived, it was half eaten by bugs. Words are missing. There's like blood dripping down it. There's just a severed hoof of whatever Pony Express tried to get it there and was killed by Native Americans, which I think they should have done. I support them in their pursuit of justice, but so you couldn't really nail down these deals with letters. So meeting in the flesh used to matter. Nowadays, it doesn't fucking matter. You can pillage the world having never met the other person in the flesh. So the fact that people get together doesn't matter that much. What matters is that Congress is having him in front of them to speak to them because they adore him. They support this garbage proxy war, which, by the way, I'm not the only person to call it a proxy war. You guys know this. Independent media calls it a proxy war. Some of the nutbag right-wingers on Fox News call it a proxy war. And even fucking former CIA head Leon Panetta has called it a proxy war. You have other Congress people that have called it a proxy war. Like, they know it's a proxy war. Leon Panetta maybe is one of the highest level officials dumb enough to say it on television. But yeah, it's a given. This is a proxy war. And there's plenty of liberals and plenty of Republicans out there who still refuse to believe it. They believe the propaganda that they're fed by these various news networks, and it's sad to see. I mean, some people are just gonna. This is not my quote. Some people are just gonna die stupid. They're just gonna die wrong. Okay, that's just what our world is. And look, I am all for you trying to convince them. I try and convince people in my life. But some people are going to die dumb. It's just the reality of it. This doesn't mean you can't love them. I got family members. I would say I at least like them a lot. And they're going to die dumb on this topic, at least. They're going to die dumb. The visit was unsurprisingly kept a secret. Yeah, right. Until it's everywhere. They're having him speak in front of Congress. How long do they think that would be a secret? The U.S. has been Ukraine's most important ally in the war. It's not an ally. When a puppeteer has their fingers out and they got the puppet here with the strings attached, do people go, look at that guy who's the puppet's ally? Like, look at that ally standing behind the puppet with the strings on his fingers. That's not an ally. It's a puppeteer. It's a controller. It's the kid with the joystick. They don't go, oh, that kid with the joystick is an ally of the fucking dudes on the screen. I love that I did joystick, as if do joysticks even exist anymore? Is there even? By the way, can I just add? What do we say my catchphrase was? By the way, or not to mention? But the other thing. Oh, yeah, I got a lot of them. By the way, not to mention, the other thing is, can we just talk about? Look, the joystick was already phallic to begin with, and then to give it a name like the joystick, no, you didn't have to do that. Every guy's got a joystick on him, so you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to name it that. Name it the. I guess they're all bad. I was going to say control rod. That's no better. That's no better at all. But my point is just I remember as a kid, the joystick would like go out of their way to make it look more phallic. They'd like it'd be like a shaft with a head. Like, you didn't have to do that. Couldn't you have something that doesn't just, did you have to write cock across the side of it? Like, anyway, for those of you who grew up after a time where the joystick existed, then you just consider yourself lucky. Because also in the earlier days of video games, it was like 90% boys and men doing it. So 90% men and boys holding a dildo-shaped thing and pushing a button on the tip. And you had billion-dollar PR marketing execs sitting in a boardroom going, why is it mostly men playing these games? We're trying to get to the female audience, but we just can't figure out why most women don't want to wrap their gentle hands around a plastic cock and play with it for hours, hours on end. Anyway, that was not a tangent, okay? I had that written down to talk about. No, I'm kidding. That was beyond a tangent. All right. So we got another $2 billion. So this is another $2 billion that Congress is throwing at Zelensky. $50 billion is what BBC says is the total. And by the way, they say of humanitarian, financial, and security assistance. It's fucking war games. It's not humanitarian. And even if they did hand out little box lunches, it was probably $12 out of the $50 billion. These are guns and missiles. By the way, CNN and CBS have they ultimately retracted it because they got pressure from the government, but they both admitted that 70% of the arms being sent to Ukraine are not getting to the front line. They get sold on the black market, sold to whoever the highest bidder is. That's where your taxpayer dollars are going with these missiles and everything. But so it says 50 billion. But it's not just that. It's not what they say, charity, humanitarian. It's not humanitarian, but on top of that, it's really more like 100 when you count everything that has been sent to Ukraine. But it's actually even more than that, because what almost none of these analysis account for, because they can't come up with a number for this, so you can't add a number to that billion, is the reallotment of resources from other areas, other theaters, as our government likes to call it, other areas of the world. So the U.S. takes, for example, the insane weaponry we had in Afghanistan, which we've now pulled out of. Don't worry, we're still destroying countless lives in Afghanistan. We're killing more people with our economic war on Afghanistan than we killed with bombs in the past few years. But we take that weaponry that's coming out of Afghanistan and we just ship it to Ukraine. It doesn't even come back to the U.S. And during that process, it's not counted towards these billions that are being sent over to Ukraine. So although many people say the estimate is 100 billion has been sent to Ukraine, it's more than that when you count just reallotment of resources. And yeah, I see someone in the comment mentioning that 20 billion could end homelessness. I mean, it depends on whether you're talking about in the world or in the U.S., but easily ended in the U.S. But their analysis that 30 billion would end world hunger for a year. So if you take 100 billion, that ends world hunger. Every living soul in the world would have their hunger ended, and that's for a year, but this would do it for 3 years, and we continue to send billions to Ukraine, so you could really do it forever. And if you take the military budget in general, you could do it forever. And they say the military budget is to give us security, right? That's the idea, is to give the United States security. You know what would really give the United States security? If we ended world hunger every year, no questions asked. So that's how you know it's a lie. Of course, I'm kidding, because I know that it's a lie. I know that they don't care about security of your average American. What they care about is security of the petrodollar, is security of hegemony, is security of world empire. That's what they care about. And when they tell you they're working for defense or security, it is security of the petrodollar, economic hegemony, physical hegemony. That's what they're really working towards. But yes, so I hope you're all excited to have Zelensky in the United States. Finally, I hope he gets some wonderful American food while he's here. I hope he stacks up on I don't even know what counts as American food anymore. Thai food, I'd say, is the number one American food. We've become so everything's just like the corporate homogenized culture. It just melts over everything, and you lose out on anything that's original or like American. Like what's American? A hamburger? It's not even named after. It's named after some sort of German food, right? Uh, like there's nothing. I don't know. I don't even know what you'd say. Apple pie. I can't even remember the last time I had apple pie. So I don't know what he's. Maybe he'll go and get some KFC or something, and he'll say he got some American food, even though KFC is global now. He could have gotten that in Britain, but anyway. All right, so we're moving on to the next topic here. By the way, quick note that if you become a member at leecamp.net, right there, the lowest level is $1.25 a week. Really not a game changer, I hope, for most people. If you become a member before the end of the year, then I'll send you a free digital copy of my book, Bullet Points and Punchlines. And it's got an intro by Chris Hedges, a foreword by Jimmy Dore. I hope you will do that. Become a member at leecamp.net. Support my work. I'm the most censored comedian in America. Most of you know that stuff, so I'll stop talking about it. But I'm about to get into how the CIA was definitely an influence in the coup going on right now in Peru. We had assumed that. We'd assumed that as kind of a maybe, but now we have more proof, more evidence. I'm going to get into the sad end of a long career for one of our beloved mainstream media reporters. I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to show you the new episode of the most censored news on AFRICOM, on what the U.S. is doing in Africa that your mainstream media will never tell you. And the Pentagon has done everything they can to cover up. So that's coming up too. All right, well, let's get into this Peru story. So I've already covered, I've done it in a few episodes about how a coup is just taking place in Peru. They took out well, I'll just show you the article. They took out President Castillo, and we knew when that happened. So what they did is they basically did it with lawfare. That's the new way that the United States generally commits most of our coups, or coups we advise towards. They're not all us. It's usually us working with some right-wing horrific oligarchy in that country. So when I say U.S.-backed coup, I don't mean you have Marines standing in the fucking hallways of their government. It is us, the U.S., working and educating and advising the right-wing oligarchy in whatever country on how to bring down their government. Now, sometimes it's Marines standing in the hallways. That's when we couldn't get the right wing to do it. But so in Peru, you had a actual, a man of the people, like a legit man of the people, a teacher, a indigenous person, President Castillo, and he won with a genuine election, a real election, far more legit than U.S. elections. And within a year, has it been less than a year? Basically, they had made it impossible for him to be president. Nothing, like he could get nothing through the Congress, or they call it Congress or Parliament. I think, yeah, they call it Congress. The Congress in Peru is heavily right wing, and they had made it impossible for him to govern, and they were prepared to. He knew they were going to impeach him soon for some made up charges. So he did something that's actually legal under Peru's constitution, which your mainstream media will talk about the story, and they'll never mention that what Castillo is about to do is legal in Peru's constitution. He was going to disband the Congress and then I guess have elections for a new one or something like that. But before he could do that, so he said, he was doing that, and they then responded, Congress did, by impeaching him and arresting him. So he's now in prison, and his right-wing vice president has now become president. And we had known that the U.S. It felt like U.S. greasy tentacle fingerprints were on it, right? You kind of know these things without knowing it. But here is the now full-on evidence. This is from multipolarista.com, great outlet. CIA agent turned U.S. ambassador met with the Peruvian defense minister the day before the president was overthrown. This is the U.S. ambassador to Peru, who is legit a former CIA agent, meeting with the defense minister, who basically is what allowed this to happen, because I'm getting ahead of the article, so I might as well just read a few sentences. The U.S. ambassador in Peru, hold on. The U.S. ambassador in Peru, a veteran CIA agent named Lisa Kenna, met with the country's defense minister just one day before democratically elected left-wing President Pedro Castillo was overthrown in a coup d'etat and imprisoned without trial. Peru's defense minister, a retired brigadier general, ordered the military to turn against Castillo. So, as some of you may know, the thing that most coups, bloodless or not, rely on is where the military goes. Does the military turn for one side or the other? And, in the case of Donald Trump, whatever you want to call it. I mean, clearly he did not win the election. I don't think if you have half a brain cell, you understand that. And believe me, I've talked about election fraud more than anybody, but Donald Trump didn't win that election. And so after that, with Trump saying he won the election when he didn't, and Biden saying he won the election, it really did come down to, in many ways, where the military was going to go. Yes, the media is very important. There are other aspects, but if the military had selected, Trump over Biden, you would have had a completely different scenario. It wouldn't have mattered what the media was saying. So in this case, you have Peru's defense minister ordering the military against Castillo. And I assume that he'd done research to find out that wouldn't cause the entire military to go against him, the defense minister. But anyway, so he was pivotal in this coup. The coup set off mass protests across Peru, which will continue to go on right now. The unelected regime, I don't even know if I mentioned it, but Castillo is not just indigenous, but he's left-wing. That's whenever the U.S. helps create coups around the world, we're always going against left-wing governments, almost exclusively. Occasionally, there's a dictator who we dislike because he's undermining the petrodollar, like Gaddafi. But in general, most of the governments that we upend and, destroy and coup and everything, they're left-wing governments, because the U.S. is a far right-wing government. And for those of you who are shocked by that, I get that sometimes a right-winger stumbles into my live streams and doesn't understand the way the world works. You may be sitting there going, what are you talking about? The U.S. is crazy left-wing. They're doing all this stuff with trans people and gay marriage is legal. Basically, all you can point to for reasons the U.S. is left-wing are these smaller issues. And that doesn't mean they don't impact people. Obviously, trans rights are important to a lot of people. But if you are looking at the entirety, the umbrella of the U.S. system, the things that touch everything like capitalism and environmental destruction and corporate control, those things are larger issues. I'm sorry if that offends any trans folks out there. But the things you can point to as being so-called left-wing are much smaller societal, internal, domestic issues like gay marriage. But even with something like gay marriage, that wasn't done by Obama. That was done by the Supreme Court. So even that, you can't say the U.S. government was left-wing on. But still, I get the confusion because Fox News works so hard to confuse so many people. But we have a far right wing government. 80 to 90% of the structural issues, I mean the core issues of the United States are far right wing. They are cutthroat, unfettered, capitalist destruction of the world. They are endless war. Zelensky's speaking to parliament, right? Because we want endless war. We want to use Ukraine as cannon fodder to drain Russia for as long as possible. They are the core issues, $1 trillion to the Pentagon every year. It's really more than that if you count a lot of other things that are technically still part of the military industrial complex. But $1 million. $1 million. Could you imagine? The Pentagon spends $1 million in the time each of us blinks. The Pentagon spends $1 million. I feel like getting that wrong, tripping over that and saying $1 million is like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers when he goes, "We will destroy the world unless you give us $1 million. And they all start laughing because $1 million is meaningless. So it's $1 trillion, not to mention, of course, the $21 trillion of unaccounted for adjustments over 15 years at the Pentagon. I just did a video on that last week for the most censored news at youtube.com/behind the headlines. In fact, my tweet on that has over 10,000 retweets. So I hope you will, at the very least, check out the Twitter thread at Lee Camp. Follow me on Twitter and check that out. But if you're like, I don't have 10 minutes to learn about how $21 trillion have gone missing at the Pentagon admitted in the latest audit that they can't account for half their assets. Half their assets, including buildings, roads, fucking military equipment. They can't account for half of it. They admitted that. Anyway, so we have a far right-wing government. Far right-wing Congress. It's a corporate state. For those of you who are right-wing, who are baffled by all of this, and you go, oh, this is not what I learned from the guy who said the thing. It's called inverted totalitarianism. That's what we actually have. The political philosopher Sheldon Wolin coined that term. It means ruled by the anonymous corporate state. So let's break this down. You are ruled by the corporate state. Nothing gets through Congress, just about nothing gets through Congress that doesn't align with the corporate state. Large studies have proven that. So nothing goes through Congress that doesn't align with the corporate state. Well, what does the corporate state want? Well, it definitely wants U.S. hegemony, which is a right-wing imperialist concept. It definitely wants unfettered capitalism, which is a right-wing destructive concept. And the corporate state wants the citizens to believe they have democracy while they exploit and extract everything, which is a far right-wing, basically fascistic stance. So that's what we live under. And it doesn't matter even if they were to solidify abortion rights for women, which is, people view as liberal or left-wing. Even if they did codify that rather than let it be undermined and destroyed. Even if they did, that would be the exception that proves the rule. That'd be one tiny issue that is a left wing as whatever, but you could call it left wing or liberal thing that in society that would be done. That is not the overarching umbrella of how the society is working. Anyway, all of that is to say that we coup left-wing countries because we want right-wingers in there. We want unfettered capitalists in there. We want the oligarchy in there. We want the spoils of the world, the extraction, the results of the extraction of the world to go to the richest people. We don't want it spread out over everybody. We don't want everybody to benefit. So what you're seeing here is the Peruvian military getting active to stop protesters who are standing up for Castillo, for President Castillo. Most governments in Latin America have criticized or even refused to recognize Peru's unelected coup regime, including Mexico, Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia, Honduras, Venezuela, Cuba, and various Caribbean nations. When Donald Trump When the Donald Trump administration nominated Lisa Kenna to be ambassador to Peru in 2020, the State Department released a certificate of competency that revealed that before joining the Foreign Service, she served for 9 years as a CIA officer. Now, why is that quote so important? Because in other areas, they have purged the fact that she worked for the CIA. Ben Norton says it's curiously absent from one of Kenna's bios, including her page on the U.S. Embassy's official website. So the U.S. Embassy's official website does not mention she spent 9 years in the CIA. This is a CIA agent who is in Peru right now and met with their defense minister the day before this coup went down. And here's a photo of it. They even took a photo of them planning to coup the left-wing government in Peru. So there you have it, folks. Isn't it nice to see the U.S.? But, these are the type of facts that come out in the days that follow a coup like this. But those of us who actually follow these things on a regular basis, a day-to-day basis. By the way, there were 2 U.S. coups in 1 week. Actually, in 2 days, 2 weeks ago. One in Peru, one in Argentina. The one in Argentina is getting less talked about because it was stopping the vice president from ever being able to run for president. So that seems like not quite a coup, but it was designed to stop her from ever being president, which she was about to run for and win. But these things, we know these things the day it happens. So you see that a left-wing president in Peru is arrested by Congress for vague charges. And if you've studied these things, you know how they go down. You go, okay, first of all, that's if this was a left-wing leader, then that was the right wing and the oligarchy of that country that is upset that a left-winger is running the country. But then on top of that, there was at least U.S. advisement, U.S. support. Generally, the U.S. media then gets very active for the following couple of days to cement the fake reality, to cement the Castillo, corrupt, arrested, blah, blah, blah. For like 1 day, they get very active to make sure that anyone who Googles what's going on with Castillo, immediately corrupt Castillo, arrested, and it cements this false history of the world. So the U.S. media gets very active, usually for a few days. But those of us who study these things, who follow these things on a really regular basis, we know these facts are going to come out eventually. They just don't come out that day. It takes a few days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. And the Gulf incident, with the Gulf of Tonkin incident, it took years to have the evidence, to actually have the former Defense Secretary McNamara say on a documentary with his big stupid face right there in the camera, turns out, we were firing at weather clouds. Sometimes it takes years, but in this case, it took about a week for us to find out that the U.S. ambassador, a former CIA agent, was meeting with the defense minister who told the army to turn against Castillo. And she was meeting with him the day before. Now, of course, that's just one puzzle piece. The U.S., I'm sure, had a long-term planning. And like I said, most of this is not in front of cameras. We have a picture of this one. Most of this is not in front of cameras. They do it in Zoom meetings or encrypted whatever meetings, but it's done via little private video chat. So everybody who's upset who thinks that the only thing that matters is when they meet in person, no, they're planning ruling the world via video, okay, via text. They don't need to usually meet in person. In this case, they took a photo, which was nice of them. I always like when the U.S. empire reveals itself so in such a forthright manner. All right, the rest of this live stream will be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's already going there, so you can just join it live. If you're watching there live, then you got nothing to worry about. This will just continue right there. But the rest of this live stream will be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. I'm going to get into one of our beloved, I'd say one of our most beloved mainstream media propaganda shills is calling it quits. And we just want to give her a beautiful goodbye, a send off, and a hilarious tweet from our U.S. military about her leaving. I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into the new episode of the Most Censored News, which just came out about AFRICOM. You're going to love that. I got a lot for you. So I will see you over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Also, become a member at leecamp.net. If you become a member before the end of the year, you will get a free digital copy of my book, Bullet Points and Punchlines. So join up at leecamp.net, and thanks for supporting what I do. For those of you at Rumble, hang in there. We're going to keep going. This isn't over. Listen, this is not over between you and me. This is not fucking over.